Laurie Cardoza-Moore with Proclaiming Justice to the Nations, and I hope you and your family and friends had a very meaningful 4th of July celebration this past weekend. I just want to share with you something that was really, I found extremely hopeful. If you had watched President Trump's 2 speeches that he gave, one at Mount Rushmore on July 3rd, and then the other one on the 4th of July in Washington, D.C. at the White House, President Trump did something that he has not done up until this time, up until this period. He actually mentioned the indoctrination of America's classrooms, of our children. He recognizes that what we are witnessing unfolding in the streets of our cities can be directly tied back to the anti-American, anti-Judeo-Christian, anti-Semitic content, pro-Marxist content, pro-socialist content being taught to our children in our public schools. And as you know, we have been at the forefront at PJTN in exposing and combating this issue district by district, state by state for almost a decade. But it gave me hope knowing that President Trump is starting to see the picture here. We had submitted our white paper to the administration through a contact that I have, and almost 20 of the statements that President Trump made were statements that we have made over the last 8 years since we've been fighting this battle. But I wanted to point something out because, you know, I hear from many of you who are extremely frustrated and concerned about the desecration and the toppling and destruction of our monuments, our landmarks. And I want to talk to you about that because these landmarks are very important. Some people say, well, what does it matter? You know, we should take some of these landmarks down. Some of them are a part of the history that we would rather forget. We can't do that, ladies and gentlemen, and I want to share with you a principle that I found in the Bible that is so important for us to understand and apply to this situation, and I'm going to tell you why. As I was doing my quiet time and praying and reading the scriptures this morning, I came upon Jeremiah in chapter 31, verses 20, and I just want to share with you what God told the prophet. He says, make road markers for yourself. Set up landmarks for yourself. Set the thoughts of your heart upon the road, the route that you are walking. He goes on to repeat in other places in the text of the Bible. In Proverbs chapter 22, verse 28, he says, do not move back the long-standing boundary marker that your forefathers established. He goes on to repeat himself in Proverbs chapter 23, verse 10. Do not move back the long-standing boundary marker. In Deuteronomy chapter, I believe it's 27 and verse 17, he says, accursed is one who moves the boundary of his fellow. And then there is another verse in Deuteronomy chapter 19 in verse 14. He says, you shall not move a boundary of your fellow, which the early ones marked out, in your inheritance that you shall inherit, in the land that the Lord your God gives you to possess it. So ladies and gentlemen, God is restating. He said it to Solomon in the book of Proverbs. He spoke it to Moses in the book of Deuteronomy. And he also spoke it to the prophet Jeremiah. He repeated himself about not removing the landmarks, not removing the ancient boundary stones. So when they go back, they will be able to find their way back. He's talking about the Israelites, but let's take this principle. Let's apply it to the United States. Let's apply it to our inheritance and our heritage as a nation, because this nation, despite what Antifa and Black Lives Matter and all these other Marxist, Leninist groups, socialist groups say, We are a Judeo-Christian nation. It was on the backs of Jews and Christians that the United States of America was founded. So don't ever let anybody convince you otherwise. And there are markers, monuments, boundary stones that were laid by by our forefathers, those who came before us. And we are told right here specifically, we should not remove them. Why? Because even those monuments, whether they represent a great part of America's history or whether they represent a dark period, God always uses ancient markers to help us find our way back. And if we destroy our ancient boundary markers, the markers that were put up by our forefathers, those who came before us, we will not be able to find our way back to our heritage, to who we are as a nation, to why we were established. So ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be talking about this, and we're going to be talking about the landmarks and the ancient boundary stones over the coming weeks leading into November, because we as Americans must fight to keep those markers, those boundary stones in place, so that our generation and those generations who come after us will be able to trace our footsteps back to our nation's founding. That could have only happened because of the hand of Almighty God. So ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you all so much for your support. We are launching a nationwide campaign, state by state, district by district, to mobilize parents and tax-paying citizens to take back local control of our education system. And I cannot do it without your help. We have a dedicated and committed team. You know it because you've seen the evidence of it. You've looked at our boundary markers of where we've come over the last 15 years. And so we need your financial support. I need more PJTN watchmen standing on the front lines of this battle with me. I need more PJTN watchmen that will be willing to start a chapter in your community so that we can mobilize and organize your state, your counties, county by county, to take back control of our country, to reestablish our ancient boundary markers and rebuild what has been torn down in our generation. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. On behalf of our whole team at PJTN and all of our watchmen around the world, and I want to say God bless you and thank you for all you do on behalf of our Jewish brethren, for the state of Israel, and for these United States.